Which is what if Naruto became the Forbidden Demon King and built a legendary harem with Hinata, Sakura, Tsunade, Konan, Temari, Mei, Ino, Kurenai, Tenten, Kushina, Kyuubi and Alara. Part 3. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. It had been 3 weeks since Naruto and Kyuubi had entered the realm of Makai, and during that time Naruto had grown a lot, and not just in strength. With his Yuki still more or less trying to balance itself within his body, the blonde had grown another 5 inches, making him stand at a height of 6 feet even, or 182 centimeters. He also looked older now, his physical body matching the 16 to 18-year-old look of Kyuubi. Speaking of the vixen, she was the one who told him why he was growing so damn much. Not that Naruto was going to complain. His height had always been something he had been self-conscious about. The fact that most of the kids at the academy had teased him for being so short notwithstanding. The reason for his incredibly growth spurt, apparently, was because he quite simply had too much Yuki for his body to handle. With the nearly overwhelming amount of power now being regulated through his tenketsu, his body had been close to destroying itself from the inside out. Thus the excess Yuki that he let out subconsciously was being used to increase his growth in order to handle his power. For someone who had been about just short of 146 centimeters just a little less than a month ago, it was a nice change. Naruto had learned much, both about his new powers and his demon heritage. Under Kyuubi's tutelage he had learned how to manipulate his Yuki. With the use of his Kage Bunshin training method, in which Naruto usually had around 2,000 or 3,000 clones on average, the blonde could now say he was a master at manipulating his own energy. Though Kyuubi's words that he was good enough for now had made him face fault. Still, he couldn't deny she was way better at energy manipulation than he was, and so he didn't complain when the redhead had told him he still had a lot to learn. He had also gained much better control over his chakra. Because Naruto was at least part human, he still had his large reservoir of chakra, which had also taken a leap in size, his reserves being about twice as large as they had been when he was human. Kyuubi had told him this was because the seal had still been active for some time after she had been unsealed, even though it no longer had anything to hold after she had been released. The seal, which had originally been designed to leak Kyuubi's Yuki into Naruto's chakra coils, had instead taken Naruto's own Yuki and began pumping them through his chakra coils, increasing them in size before the seal was destroyed completely. He did not know how good his control was, as there was no way for him to measure it. However, Naruto now had a very good feel of his own chakra, and the several jutsu that he knew, Kage Bunshin, Kawarimi and Henge, could all be done seamlessly and without smoke. On a side note, for some reason the only human technique that he could use with his Yuki was the Kage Bunshin no jutsu. Naruto assumed that was because it was a direct manipulation of energy, whereas the Henge was a genjutsu ninjutsu hybrid and the Kawarimi was a very basic jikuken jutsu. Not everything they had done was fighting, however, they had taken frequent trips back to Hiseki's shop. After explaining who it was the four-tailed kitsune had insulted, and swearing him to total secrecy, the man had been much more accommodating towards them, even going so far as to give Naruto's first 2 sets of clothes to him for free. After that they had gotten a nice discount, and the blonde was now the proud owner of several sets of kimonos and battle outfits that would repair themselves and grow as he did. A good thing too since he had been 173 centimeters when he first got his clothes. Currently Naruto was wearing his favorite outfit. Tight black pants that were designed to stretch across his form to fit his muscular legs. He wasn't wearing a shirt, but he did have a vest that was made from the skin of one of the greater fiends he had killed during his training. It was black with a dark orange Uzumaki swirl on the back, which was surrounded by a pattern similar to the tattoo around Raizen's left eye in the same orange color. Currently it was unzipped, showing off Naruto's ripped torso. Over his vest was a sleeveless haori. It was also black, with another orange Uzumaki swirl on the back and had orange flames licking the bottom and reaching down to his ankles. It came with a hood sewn into it. Hiseki had placed a kitsune enchantment on his hood, so that when Naruto put it up all someone would see were his eyes. The haori could also zip up, and when Naruto wanted he could attach sleeves of varying sizes and makes to it so that no one would be able to see what he looked like. Finishing off his outfit were a pair of dark orange boots, which were covered by sleek-looking black shin guards. His arms were likewise covered by a pair of arm guards, and a pair of orange fingerless gloves. All in all Naruto felt the look was bad, and if the way Kyuubi had purred and almost jumped him when she first saw him wearing them was anything to go by, he was damn sexy too. As it was she had waited until they had left the Yuki village to jump him. Which was just fine with Naruto. With all that had happened in the past 3 weeks, Naruto had to say he was rather pleased. He was getting stronger every day, he was learning more now than he ever had at the academy or from Kakashi. He was learning about his heritage, at least the demonic half of it, and he had a beautiful vixen by his side. Yep, life was good for Naruto, and even the so-called last test Kyuubi had told him about couldn't bring him down from his current high. So that's it, huh? Asked Naruto as he looked at the massive tower hovering over a city that was covered in mist. The city itself was fairly large, and he could only see a part of it due to the mist that covered most of the sprawling mass of buildings, which meant the city was much larger than it appeared. The only thing that he could really make out was the tower, a large spiraling mass of stone and mortar that looked like your stereotypical evil dungeon, with sweeping staircases and buttresses of all kinds on outside along with several large, pointed towers and statues of various animals that Naruto could not recognize. My last test. Yes, answered Kyuubi as she too looked out at the city. That city is called the City of Ghosts and Apparitions. The castle above it is called Mei's Castle, and is the fortress of the 4 Saint Beasts. Most of the demons living in the city are small-time, E to C class. However, the 4 Saint Beasts are said to be more powerful and will be a good test to see if you learned everything I have taught you so far. How do you know about these 4 Saint Beast guys anyways? Asked Naruto. You've been sealed up for like 100-something years, haven't you? A tick mark formed on Kyuubi's head at being reminded of her previous imprisonment. However, she didn't let him know how his words irritated her. She knew he didn't mean it as an insult but a legitimate question. Because they formed about a year before I was forced to live in the human world. While they aren't that powerful compared to some of the demons in Makai, they are powerful enough that they were able to take over this city. They are also vastly more intelligent than the demons I have had you face thus far. Demons that lived on the plains of Makai were generally very stupid, lacking in everything but the most basic forms of instinct. While some of them, like the greater fiends and the Orangora, had a lot of power, they did not have the brains to properly use that power. Naruto nodded before he turned to Kyuubi and grinned. Since I have to go alone, how about a kiss for good luck? The redhead rolled her eyes, even as a grin of her own formed on her face. She pressed herself against the blonde, had wrapped her arms around him. She raised herself up on her tiptoes as Naruto leaned down, his eyes closing. However, just before their lips touched, Kyuubi pressed 2 fingers against his, making him open his eyes and blink owlishly. I think not. The grin on the redhead's face grew wider, her larger-than-average canines slightly poking out from her upper lip. How about you do well, and if I'm impressed then maybe, just maybe, I'll give you that kiss you're craving. And with those words Kyuubi disappeared within a shundo, leaving Naruto blinking after her. Said blonde looked at where Kyuubi had been in his arms just second ago, blinking in confusion. That lasted only so long, however, before he growled in frustration. Damn it, Hugh-chan. You can't just leave me all bothered like this. He grumbled for several moments before blinking as several ghouls surrounded him. Not in the mood to deal with these small fry, he growled. What the hell do you pricks want? The ghouls ignored him, however, as they talked amongst themselves. Such a delicious smell. He looks so tasty. Let's eat. Several large tick marks formed on his head as the ghouls spoke. Oi, I suggest you all shut the up before I rip your goddamn intestines out of your throat and shove them up your. He let loose a small amount of his power and killing intent. Small being a very relative term. What Naruto did was release around maybe 10% of his power and killing intent. However, 10% of his power was on class with an B-ranked demon, and therefore much more powerful than anything these ghouls had likely ever come across. Therefore it was no surprise when the moment he unleashed his power, the ghouls hightailed their asses out of the blonde's vicinity. Naruto snorted before going on his way, grumbling about vixens and how they were going to regret leaving him horny the whole way. Meanwhile, within the Mei's Castle, Naruto's presence did not go unnoticed. It's been a while since we've had a visitor. Who cares? There's only one of them, and he hardly has any power to him. He's not even worth our attention. What say you, Master Suzaku? Byako is correct. A single demon with only enough energy for AD rank. I doubt he could even make it past the front door. So this is Mei's Castle up close, huh? Naruto snorted. How quaint. He began walking closer to the entrance but only made it a few steps before being approached by a strange creature whose purple body consisted a single eyeball centered between 2 bat wings. Welcome to Mei's Castle. The one who wishes to enter this castle must first be tried by the Gate of Betrayal, announced the creature. Trial? Asked Naruto, tilting his head from side to side as he looked at the creature. What trial? In answer to the blonde's question, the creature darted over to a switch on the side of the wall, causing the ceiling above them to fall down. Naruto frowned as he raised a hand and held the roof from collapsing on him. I hope this isn't the trial. If so, then I want my refund. This place sucks. This door is very sensitive and quite tricky. It is able to detect the strength of the people supporting it and apply the greatest pressure possible without crushing them outright, the creature said in what Naruto assumed was a smug tone. Just listening to the creature pissed him off. As soon as one person slacks, it will then completely fall to the ground. If one person betrays the rest and escapes, the rest will be crushed. If everyone remains, eventually you will tire and you will all be crushed. Only betrayers have the right to enter this castle. So who's going to live and who's going to die? Ha 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 ha. Oi, did you forget I'm a lone sucker? Asked Naruto. The blonde cocked his unused hand back. He channeled a little power into his fist, not enough for anyone to see or even feel the energy. But enough for what he wanted. Naruto smashed his fist into the ceiling and unleashed the energy he had channeled into it. There was a small shockwave that was sent out from his fist hitting the ceiling. Cracks and fissures began to form, running along the surface. Then the entire ceiling exploded in a shower of debris. The shocked creature didn't even have time to do more than widen its eyes before Naruto grabbed it in his hand and squeezed. Gross, demon guts, Naruto said after popping the creature like a balloon. He shook the juices and entrails from the crushed creature off of him. He looked around for a moment and grunted. This is so boring. I hope this lame trap isn't conducive to the rest of the castle. He sighed. Whatever, might as well get this shit over with. Maybe if I get done quick enough, Q-chan will give me a nice reward. He giggled a little at the thoughts of what he and Kyuubi would be doing together as he began walking into the castle proper. Somewhere in Konoha Jiraiya felt the urge to shout and pump his fist, which he did. Unfortunately, he was currently spying on the women's hot spring while all the female Anbu members were taking a soak. His cries were so loud that Kyuubi, who was waiting for Naruto, heard them and smiled. He managed to pass the fate of betrayal. Seems this child is stronger than we thought. What should we do, Master Suzaku? Do not worry, Seiryu. This only means we'll have a little more entertainment for the time being. The boy is a fool if he thinks he has what it takes to storm this castle on his own. Someone go down and play with him. Ha, this stupid blonde thinks he can come in here all by himself and defeat us. I'll crush him where he stands. No, I shall show this fool the true perils of Mei's castle. The mighty Genbu shall bring you his corpse to you immediately. I shall stick his head on a pike at the top of the tower as a message to all those who would oppose us. Ha 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 ha. Dear Sweat Kami, when Q-chan said this place was a maze, she meant it, Naruto grumbled. He had been walking around the winding passages for over half an hour, searching for a set of stairs that would lead him to the next level with no luck. God damn it, when am I going to get to fight anyone? Looks like someone seems rather eager to die. Ha 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 ha, a raspy voice bellowed out. Finally, I was wondering when one of you idiots would get here, Naruto said. I've been getting terribly bored. You've got some guts, punk. Take the door on your right and I shall show you just how out of your league you are, the voice commanded. The blonde grinned. You won't be saying that after I kick your... exclaimed Naruto as he slammed open the iron double doors. The room was illuminated only by a few torches, while the majority of it remained hidden in darkness. In the back, a spiraling stairway leading upwards could be seen. Naruto sighed as he tried to peer into the darkness with no success. He still didn't have a grasp on enhancing his senses as it took far more control than he currently had. Thinking of a better way to get some light, the blonde channeled some Yuki into his hands and created a ball of flame. Well, it wasn't quite a flame. Naruto had learned early on that his Yuki had no elemental properties to it, his chakra did, but not his Yuki. The flame in his hands was essentially just a ball of compressed Yuki that acted similar to fire. It was, in many ways, similar to Kyuubi's own Kitsune fire, otherwise known as Kitsune Bai. Holding out his hand, the flame flew towards the ceiling, lighting up the rest of the room. Naruto blinked as he got sight of the rather large beast before him. The mammoth-sized beast was composed entirely of rocks. He had turtle-style shell protecting his back, spikes on top of his head, and a long stone tail hanging out behind him. Welcome, trespasser. Ha ha ha, laughed the creature. Naruto had a deadpan look on his face. I'm going to be fighting a fucking rock. Are you kidding me? I am Genbu of the Four Saint Beasts. Genbu told him, seemingly ignoring Naruto's insult. The blonde assumed the man was not only a rock, but likely as dumb as one as well. Any last request before I rip you limb from limb? Yeah, how can a beast be a saint? Asked Naruto, and I've heard of pet rocks before, but talking rocks. This is the only set of stairs leading up to the tower. You can defeat me and go up there on your own, or I can drag you there once you've stopped breathing. Bellowed Genbu as he smacked his tail against the floor, creating a giant crater. I hope you don't have anyone back home waiting for you, or they're going to be left a widow. That was lame, Naruto said, such a lame comeback. Can't you do any better than that? You've got guts for such a pathetic creature. Ha ha ha, Genbu laughed as his tail sunk into the ground. Genbu's tail shot out of the ground from behind Naruto, attempting to smack him across the room. Not that the blonde demon shinobi had any intention of letting it. Turning around, Naruto unleashed a blast of energy from his fist, smashing it into the tail and destroying it. The tail reformed and retracted back into his body a moment later. Ha 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 ha. Thanks to my body structure, I can become one with any type of rock. With a little rearranging, I can make any stone one of my limbs. Since this whole chamber is made of stone, I have you surrounded. There is nowhere to run. Naruto's sweat dropped. Did you seriously just reveal your abilities without even being tricked into it? I was right, you really are as dumb as a rock. You have yet to see the full extent of my power. Perhaps then you won't be so. Declared Genbu as his entire body sunk into the stone floor. Naruto sighed. I have no desire to play hide and seek with you. The blonde demon shinobi was forced to leap backwards as Genbu's arm shot up out of the ground in the spot where he was previously standing. He backflipped backwards several times as he avoided the rock's arms and tails that attempted to squash him. Naruto frowned. So it looks like I have to draw him out of hiding before I can cut him to pieces. Fine by me. Using Shundo, Naruto began to flash himself around the room, moving so fast that he left after images in his wake. He dodged arms, legs and tails with ease, taunting Genbu all the while. My god, you suck. It's no wonder you were the first one I fought. You're probably so weak the other beasts figured you were expendable. Genbu, frustrated by his inability to crush the blonde and enraged by Naruto's taunts, launched himself out of the ground and into the air. I'll crush you. Finally, Naruto crowed as he crossed his hands and created several black discs of energy. The flung his hands out in an X pattern, launching 10 discs at the same time. 2 of the discs sliced right through his head, 2 cut off his arms, 2 more went through his legs, and 4 of them cut into his torso. The chunks of stone that had formerly been his body fell to the ground with a loud thud. Naruto smirked as he dusted off his hands. Man, that was just sad, Naruto said, shaking his head. If this is the caliber I can expect with these saint beasts, then Q-chan is just making me waste my time. Don't get, hunk, shouted Genbu's voice from the pile of rocks. Naruto watched in stunned silence as the pile of stones started shaking as Genbu's body pieced itself back together. Ha 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 ha, you can slice my body up all you like, but I'll just reassemble every time, taunted Genbu as his body reached down and put his head back on. Actually, it makes for a very nice attack. A horizontal boulder explosion. Genbu stretched his arms forward, firing them along with his head as projectiles at Naruto. The blonde frowned as he made his hands into knife edges and slid into a wider defensive stance. He didn't even bother to use his Yuki to slice through the projectile arms and head, destroying them with impunity and making the pieces even smaller than last time. Let's see you recover from that, Naruto exclaimed. This is nothing, bellowed Genbu as his body reassembled itself again. Surrender and I'll make your end swift. You can't defeat me. A horizontal boulder explosion. A shouted Genbu as he started rapid-firing baseball-sized stones. Naruto frowned as he tried to come up with a plan, even as he continued destroying the boulders with well-placed punches. There's got to be a portion of his body that allows him to reassemble himself. The only problem is finding it would be like trying to find a single grain of sand on a beach. Naruto grumbled. This guy wasn't even worth the amount of time the blonde had already wasted on him. Why couldn't he just be simple to defeat like all the other demons? Well, if precision cutting doesn't work, I'll just blast the fucker away. Naruto began channeling more energy into his hand than he had previously. Enough that wisps of black energy began leaking off of his hand like steam. You efforts are useless. Just die. A horizontal boulder explosion. Genbu released his entire torso as a barrage of stone projectiles. Naruto dodged the stone projectiles, weaving through them as if they weren't even there. Using the same attack over and over again, have you no originality? Shouted Naruto as he smashed his fist into Genbu. There was a massive explosion of black energy that engulfed the large rock beast. The power Naruto unleashed caused the creature to disintegrate. Naruto looked around and snorted. How did you like that? Naruto began walking towards the stairs, grumbling the entire time. Stupid rock, making me waste so much time. The remaining beasts all watched as the blonde's attack utterly destroyed Genbu, or more like disintegrated as there was nothing left of the rock demon, not even rubble. Still, they did not seem at all concerned by the death of Genbu, nor by the progress Naruto was making. It seems that Genbu has gone and gotten himself killed, Master Suzaku. You shouldn't be so troubled, Seiryu. Genbu was the weakest among us. His only usefulness was his ability to communicate to the demons of the city through the walls. His defeat has tarnished the name of the Saint Beasts. We cannot allow this intruder to progress any further, Master. Their end is near. I'll tear him to shreds. This blonde fool will not escape the hunt of Byakko. Naruto sighed as he continued walking. This place was so boring, and Kyuubi was refusing to talk to him via their telepathy through the mating bond until he had finished his test. Man, I really wish Q-chan had chosen a different task. This is so boring. I need some action. Suddenly a deep grumbling roar shook the tower. Gra, oi, who the hell is being so loud? Shouted Naruto. Gra, cracks started to form in the stone walls and the ceiling tiles began to crumble, sending debris to the floor. Naruto frowned as he looked around at the passageway, which looked it was beginning to come apart at the seams. Large cracks began forming along the entire corridor as the stone around him crumbled and broke apart. This place doesn't look like it can take too much more of this. The blonde used Shundo to speed up the last bit of the passageway. He made it just as the ceiling collapsed behind him. Dusting himself off, Naruto walked up the final set of stairs and out the final opening of the tower to an outdoor platform. He seemed to be on a wide elevated stone pathway that was led from the tower. When Naruto looked down the sides he couldn't even see the ground, it was so far down. On the shorter pathway leading from the platform to the main portion of the compound stood the gargantuan white tiger. You must be the second beast, Naruto said, his tone carrying a hint boredom to it. The second saint beast was a huge humanoid white tiger with teal stripes, standing several meters tall. Two large fangs jutted out from the bottom of his mouth and his green mane extended down to his upper back. He sported a green and red fur tunic with leg warmers. The tiger let out a low growl as his tail thwacked against the ground behind him, cracking and denting it. Pest, you will pay for coming this far into my territory, sneered Byako before he let out another roar. This one was not quite as intense as the other one, but it was enough that Naruto had to place his hands on his ears to block out the sound. God damn it, you're loud, Naruto complained. You remind me of this human girl I know, she can shriek like Banshee too. I can't believe such an insignificant insect like you has forced me to come all the way out here. Snarled Byako. Don't be fooled by your victory over that weakling Genbu. This is the end of the line for you. Genbu was nothing. The only reason we didn't kill him ourselves is because he could communicate with the demons in the city by growling through the castle walls. Are all of you saint beasts so damn arrogant? Asked Naruto. If you think you can do better than him, then back up your claim with actions. However, Byako appeared to not be listening to the blonde's words as he continued his rant. I am a real beast. It's maddening enough that I've been locked up in this compound for all this time without the taste of human flesh. No prey, no bones, no blood. Then you have the nerve to come in here and think you can just walk all over us. Oh, I'm sorry, did hurt your ickle feelings? Asked Naruto in a baby tone. Poor little tiger. The blonde sneered and his tone became harsher when he spoke again. Stop your bitching and fight me. Insignificant trash. I will tear you apart and eat you myself. Bellowed Byako. I will rip your sari to shreds and feed you to the Fugaki. Naruto sighed. Why was this idiot still talking? Then get on with it already. GGGRRAAAAAAHHHHH. Byako unleashed another stone-shattering roar. This one ended up reducing the wide-open platform to a narrow pathway leading out to a circular area. That roar is no joke, Naruto said. Still, you're going to have to do something better than that to even put a scratch on me. Oh, is that so? Well, don't worry, I'm just getting started. Byako plucked some hairs from his mane, started blowing on them. His breath infused them with spirit energy as they suddenly shot out of his hand and into the air, where they transformed into four green-furred four-legged beasts. The four beasts all landed with a thud in front of Naruto. You're joking, Naruto said as he looked at the furring animals. Kittens. You attack me with fucking kittens. What is this? A maze of powerful demons, or an animal shelter? The blonde snapped his face as his face gained a eureka. Look to it. I know. You're opening up a petting zoo, aren't you? You won't be saying that when these kittens rip you to shreds. Byako roared in anger. How dare this pest mock him? Naruto snorted and lifted up his hand, his fingers stretched out as he pointed them at the beasts. I don't have time to deal with trash like this. Four black balls of Yuki on the tips of his fingers. As the beasts jumped, Naruto unleashed his Yuki, shooting the four energy balls right at the beasts. They struck the creatures, exploding on contact and defeating the beasts with ease. Smirking, Naruto looked at the shocked Byako. Is that all you've got, Kitty-chan? Byako growled in frustration. You will not make a mockery me, you are my prey. You make me so angry. I'll kill you myself. Naruto rolled his eyes. Then get your hairy down here, kitten. We'll see who kills who. Fool, yelled Byako as he leapt from his position and landed down on the platform with a massive thud. Naruto let out a whistle of amusement. Would you look at that? You're even bigger up close, but you could stand to cut back on the cold cuts. Those little Yuki balls of yours won't be enough to defeat me. If that's all you've got going for you, you're done for. Bellowed Byako. Naruto gave Byako a vicious grin as he held out his hand, palm pointed towards the giant tiger. Who said that was all I've got? That was one of weakest attacks. A black orb of Yuki formed in his hand and was soon launched towards Byako. The ball smashed right into the giant tiger, exploding, sending Byako and the large slab of stone hurtling down to the ground below. "Sorry, but I don't have the time nor the inclination to play with a loser like you," Naruto said as he began walking off. "It hasn't changed a bit," Kyuubi said with a fond smile as she looked at the moderately sized mansion surrounded by a gate, with the entrance being guarded by two kitsune statues that were sitting down in a pose of watchful alertness. It was a nice place, with a line of rather large trees on either side, their multicolored leaves swaying in a slight breeze. There was a pathway that led to a set of double doors in between the trees. "Not in the 500 years since I had this house made." Kyuubi walked up to the gate. It was rather intricate, with sweeping curves rather than the standard straight lines most metal gates were made up of. In the center of the entrance was the symbol of the Kitsune clan, a fox head surrounded by 9 tails in a swirl that was almost like that of the Uzumaki, ironically enough. Biting her thumb, Kyuubi smeared her blood across the symbol. It glowed red for a brief moment, before the sound of shattering glass echoed through the clearing. The gate opened smoothly and efficiently, with not a single groan, despite having obviously not been used for centuries. Kyuubi walked down the path and towards the door. When she placed her hand on the door, it too took on a red glow. Kyuubi could feel her Yuki being drained and merely waited until it unlocked with a click. She opened the door and made her way inside. The first chamber of the house was beautiful. The floor was made from a finely polished and stained wood paneling in a warm tone of color, which gave the whole room a homey and comforting feel to it. In the middle of the room was an ornate oriental-styled rug, with a pair of kitsune, one male and one distinctly female, coiling around each other in a yin-yang symbol. The walls were made of paneled wood, stained in a color that was slightly darker from the floor. On the walls hung various paintings of kitsune, landscapes and even a few of Raizen spaced evenly across the wall so it did not look too full. On the far wall sat a large fireplace, and on top of the mantel were 3 sheathed swords. The first was a nodashi, with a 13-inch handle wrapped in a finely woven red fabric. At the end of the hilt was a rectangular gold cap with the face of a kitsune etched on the 2 larger sides. 9 tassels were hanging loosely at the end. The blade was 4 feet long, and sheathed in a dark red scabbard that had black patterns spread along its length. The sword held an artistry and elegance that Kyuubi knew belayed how deadly it truly was. The other 2 were a matching set of beautifully crafted blades, a wakizashi and a katana. The wakizashi had a 24-inch long blade that was sheathed in a black scabbard with kitsune in various poses moving along its length. The hilt was made of a black wood, which seemed to suck in all life to it and had a notched grip. The katana was 25 inches in length and was sheathed in a red scabbard that held the same kitsune poses as the wakizashi, only in reverse colors. The hilt was red and seemed to emit light as opposed to sucking in it. It too had notches to indicate where the fingers should go. Both blades were extremely well crafted, so finely made that it did not look like they could be created by standard means. They also looked like a pair, meant to be used together rather than separate. On the ceiling was an ornate-looking chandelier, with several thousand candles that, even though no one had been living in this house for centuries, were still emitting a bright light that lit up the entire room. Situated on either side of it was a cloth-draped couch and what looked to be various recliners, all of them facing the fireplace and the rug. While the entire room seemed to scream wealth and opulence, it also held welcoming feel to it that made Kyuubi feel misty-eyed as she remembered all of the good times she had living here. Kyuubi shook her head as she realized she had been standing in the entryway for nearly 15 minutes and made her way into the kitchen. Were any human to ever see the kitchen, they would be surprised by how normal it looked. It had all of the standard appliances that one would expect to find in a kitchen, albeit, said appliances looked much more ornate than the average kitchen appliance. They looked like they were there for decoration just as much as they were for practical use. The entire room was bathed in whites and beiges. The countertops were a beige marble, while the floor was a white marble. There was a massive refrigerator on the left-hand side of the room, and a large assortment of kitchen appliances on the right, including a huge stove, a microwave oven, convection oven, and a deep fryer. Over to the left was another door that Kyuubi knew led to the wine cellar. She had always been a sucker for a good red wine, and the loss of being able to drink her wine had been one of the most aggravating things for Kyuubi after she had been sealed. It would not be inaccurate to say that half of the reason Mito had assumed Kyuubi to be nothing more than a raging animal of hatred and malice was because the red-haired vixen could not drink her wine. From the kitchen, Kyuubi made her way into a large dining room that seemed to be made for a rather large number of people. The table was long and narrow, and was lined on either side by plush chairs that resembled the recliners in the living room. A chandelier hung from the ceiling, illuminating the room with its brilliant light, and the design was very similar to the one in the living room. The dining room segued into a much less formal living room setting, replete with a very large, curved and plushy couch that looked as though it was made for quite a few people. The room's copyright core was also much less formal, no fancy paintings or fireplace, but the floor and walls were made of the same wooden combination, and the light in the room came from a very similar chandelier, although slightly dimmer than the one in the main living room. Kyuubi didn't bother exploring the second floor yet, she knew it possessed all of the bedrooms. For now she was content to see that while the house was a tad dusty, a little work would fix it right up. Yes, I think this place will do nicely, she commented to herself, an obvious conclusion given that there was nobody with her. I'm sure Naruto-sama will appreciate living here when he decides to take up his heritage. As Naruto continued walk down the passageway he was forced to stop as Byaku's booming laughter made the entire area shake. Out of instinct he channeled chakra to the bottom of his feet so he wouldn't stumble. Then came the roar. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr last bit at the end. He would admit to being impatient. Naruto did not like it when he was annoyed by those weaker than himself who just wouldn't give up a trait he had gained within the 3 weeks of training as he came more and more into his demonic heritage. As a demon, he not only had a lot more pride than he did as a human, he was also quite a bit more arrogant. A trait that was very common among demons, especially newer ones like him. It was not a particularly good trait, even if a part of it was warrant given Naruto's power. I'm not that easy to dispose of, fool. You are turning out to be very interesting prey. Bellowed Byakko. And you're proving to be an extremely annoying little shit, relatively speaking of course, Naruto said. Silly fool, as reward for your battle prowess, I'm inviting you into my lair, a room of hell. Declared Byakko. So, you have a room of hell while living in hell? Asked Naruto, scratching the back of his head, his annoyance forgotten and replaced with confusion. How does that make sense? Shrugging the question off, it wasn't like Byakko was going to answer anyways. Naruto made his way to and then through a large iron double door that led to rocky tunnel. The tunnel ended at a massive cavern, where the bottom of said cavern was filled with lava and had several small stone platforms shooting up out of the lava littered the room. In the center of it all was Byakko. Well, isn't this a cute little setup? Naruto commented as he looked around the cavern. However, I think you're missing the damned souls that one would find in hell. And where is the boat that's supposed to ferry the souls of the damned? And isn't there supposed to be a Cerberus guarding the gates of hell? You, my friend, obviously don't know what hell is supposed to be like at all if you think this pale imitation compares to hell. Byakko let out a booming laugh. You've got some guts, brat. So how shall we do this? Wanna try and come at me, or do you want me to come to you? Either way is fine with me. Naruto rolled his eyes, as if that didn't just scream deception right there. Well, it's not like anything you can do will hurt me anyways. Alright, kitty cat, let's rock. Naruto leapt into the air, flinging 2 black Yuki discs at Byakko that sailed through the air with a loud buzzing noise. Byakko didn't seem worried however as he clasped his throat with both hands, and started the beginning of what appeared to be another stone-shattering roar. However, a surge of energy pulsed around his body and he fired a green energy blast laced with black lightning from his mouth. The blast smashed into the energy discs and vaporized them. Naruto was forced to quickly jump to another platform, as the one he landed on was also destroyed by the blast. The thing that got Naruto's attention was the platform wasn't just destroyed, it disintegrated. You like it? Asked Byakko with a smirk. That's my Tiger Scream blast, it turns everything it touches into a pile of ashes. It's not bad, Naruto admitted. But it's still pathetic. What? Byakko roared in anger. Yeah, that was a blast, Naruto said. He grinned as he held up his hand and more energy began to coalesce into his hand. Though I suppose I shouldn't expect much from a cat like you. Let me show you how a real demon uses his Yuki. Naruto fired a ball of black and red energy from his hand. The ball was smaller than the last one he had sent, with a diameter of only 3 inches, it looked a lot more compressed than his energy ball. It crackled with energy, the discharge of which tore up several of the pillars it passed as it flew over towards the large cat. It was too fast for Byakko to dodge, and not for lack of trying, as even he had reason to fear the amount of energy that attack was emitting. The ball of compressed Yuki smashed right into his face. The results were near instantaneous as the ball of energy exploded, crackling with red power that looked almost like a surge of electricity being discharged into the air. Byakko's body fell down with a heavy thud, its entire head missing and the flesh at the edge of the wound blackening from having been burnt so badly. Naruto sniffed and quickly plugged his nose as the smell of burnt flesh hit him. Now that's just rancid. Great, I think I'm gonna vomit. Byakko has fallen, master. I know, Seryu, it appears our intruder is far more troublesome than we had first expected. That may be true, but Byakko's battle edge has weakened since we took up residence here. We can no longer sit back and let that child take the starting action. Very well, Master Suzaku. I will ensure that he does not survive the encounter with me. I have much faith in your abilities, Seiryu. I expect this to be no problem for you. Still, do not underestimate this boy. He is far stronger than we have expected. Do not worry, Master. You know I never underestimate my opponents. Naruto walked up a spiraling set of stairs, a frown on his face as he thought about the battles he had done so far. They had all been rather disappointing to say the least. He could only hope the next beast was more powerful than Byako and Genbu had been. Exiting the stairs into a circular room with about 15 solid steel doors leading in every direction. Well, talk about your fork in the road, Naruto mumbled. I was beginning to wonder if this castle would actually live up to its name. I'm guessing only one of these doors is the right door, and the wrong ones will lead to certain death. Slightly cliché copyright and a little boring, but I guess it's better than nothing. Naruto created 15 cage bunchins and had them each choose a door and walk in. He waited for a few seconds as the clones began getting killed and the memories of their death hit him. When the clone that had gone through the correct door dispelled the blonde sighed. Man, these traps suck. I'm beginning to wonder if the fools who made this castle were incompetent or the hunters who came here were just so stupid they never had to upgrade their traps. In his room at the top of the tower, Suzaku watched the progress of the blonde demon shinobi with interest. Most interesting, he managed to pick out the right door rather quickly. I almost hope he survives the battle with Seiryu. He would make a most interesting opponent. Having entered through the correct door, Naruto walked down the pathway until he came across a massive set of blue double doors outlined with ornate golden trim. To the side of the doors were a pair of blue dragon statues in snarling poses. Naruto was not very impressed. I hope this isn't meant to be intimidating. If so, then these people obviously need to get out more often. Naruto blinked in surprise as the door began to slowly creak open. Once it was open all the way, the blonde shrugged and walked inside with a casual demeanor, as if he were just going for a stroll through a park and not likely to fight a demon. Once he stepped fully inside, the door slammed shut behind him. Naruto frowned before turning back to be faced with a thick fog covering the room that made visibility severely limited. Naruto sniffed the air with a frown. This fog has the scent of the tainted energy coming off the beast's body. I wonder if he does this on purpose, or if it's just a byproduct of his naturally produced energy. Just then a low-pitched moan echoed through the fog. You have done very well to make it this far, but I will no longer allow you to disgrace my master. Naruto didn't much care for the beast's theatrics, and was quickly becoming annoyed that his enhanced eyesight couldn't pierce through the fog. What are you 5? Come out now, dragon. This hide-and-seek bullshit is pretty lame. As you request, replied the voice. Sparks of lighting soon began to flash through the fog and a large blue ball of spirit energy appeared in the center of the room. The lighting coiled around the energy ball for a few seconds before a powerful surge caused the energy to flash brightly, forcing Naruto to close his eyes in order to protect them from the bright light. The light show soon died down and most of the fog dissipated to reveal a giant figure standing before him, its figure shrouded by a swirling blue mist. The pale blue-skinned, dark-haired demon with a goatee towered over the blonde, dressed in dark blue martial arts clothes with a light blue embroidered dragon running across the front and back his torso. Naruto noticed the temperature take an immediate drop as the demon made his full presence known. It was then that the full scope of the dungeon also came into view. The dull gray square tiles of the floor were offset by the massive arctic blue rectangular panels that went from wall to wall and even covered the ceiling. In the back of the room another massive golden trimmed doorway marked the exit. Seiryu looked at the blonde as if he was nothing but a fly that he had to swat. You may call me Seiryu. You will be going no further, intruder. I have been sent here to end your life. Well, isn't that lovely? Naruto replied with an air of nonchalance. You know, given those carvings on the door that got me here, I was expecting a dragon. Not some ugly jabroni who thinks he has what it takes to take me down. You think you are capable of beating me? Very well, let us see who shall be the victor here, said Seiryu. The man raised a single hand in a, come here, gesture that was universal to all beings. Come, with pleasure, Naruto said as he burst forward, intent on crushing the man's face into his skull. Ma-ta-ta ria kenna ice dragon, roared Seiryu as he quickly brought his arm back and thrust his fist forward and unleashed a burst of energy. Naruto let loose a roar as his fist became covered in his reddish-black yuki, unleashing it upon the icy power coming towards him. The blonde was forced backwards due to the energy backlash, but he managed to destroy Seiryu's attack at the same time. That wasn't a bad, you managed to counter my attack with an attack of equal power, Seiryu admitted at seeing the blonde destroy his technique. But do not think that you have what it takes to beat me just because you managed to stop my attack. Perhaps you shouldn't be so, Naruto said. It's that same kind of arrogance that got your friends killed. The blonde then chuckled. Well, That and they just weren't on my level. I am not like those weaklings you fought to get here, Seryu countered. They were too soft, nothing more than fodder. I am a master of ice. My power shall destroy you. Amata ta ria ken. Are all you saint beasts lacking in originality? Asked Naruto as he launched a powerful blast of Yuki that destroyed Seryu's attack like it was nothing. Seriously, I thought you people were supposed to be strong. I've had better fights on the plains of Makai. I have yet to even begun showing my true power, Ehai Kori no Kagami Ice Dragon Mirrors. I'm getting an odd sense of deja vu here, Naruto said as ice mirrors sprung up from the ground, surrounding him in an igloo. The image of Seryu appeared within the mirrors. Each reflection suddenly shifted back into an attack position as they created dozens of small fang-like blades of ice and launched them through the mirrors, Hikori Kiba Ice Dragon Fangs. Naruto watched in a bored manner as he saw Seryu move from mirror to mirror, flinging those ice blades of his. He figured the man assumed his speed was overwhelming and that Naruto could not see him. A stupid assumption, but considering how arrogant these saint beasts were, the blonde supposed it was understandable that the blue dragon simply didn't think he was very strong. As the ice blades came in close, Naruto disappeared via liberal use of Shundo. He reappeared right in front of Seryu, who was just about to go into one of his mirrors. The blue dragon's eyes widened as Naruto unleashed a ball of tightly condensed Yuki into the man's face. The blonde demon shinobi watched with a dissatisfied look on his face as the blue dragon's head was destroyed. First the man's face quite literally melted, the skin disintegrating under the blonde's Yuki, followed by the muscles, then the bones. After that the entire head disappeared in a blaze of black energy. When his view cleared, Naruto watched as the now headless body of Seryu dropped onto its knees, then fell the rest of the way to the floor with a dull, meaty thud. And then there was one, he mumbled. Well, let's hope this last beast is better than the others. Naruto began climbing the tower once again after beating Seryu. He made it up the last set of stairs and walked out of the top passage where he found the last of the saint beasts waiting for him. Suzaku had long orange hair parted down the middle, with 2 red strands. He was wearing a circlet on his head, a red sleeveless shirt, of white baggy pants and red boots. Compared to the other 3 beasts, the leader looked human, even down to his size. When the man noticed Naruto, he smiled. Ah, I was hoping you would get here. After seeing you battle your way through my subordinates, I began feeling rather keen on fighting you myself. So you're the leader of the Saint Beasts? Asked Naruto. That is correct, my name is Suzaku. May I know the name of the warrior I am to do battle with? Naruto rolled his eyes at the overly dramatic and traditional voice this guy was taking. Like the man actually thought he would be powerful enough to beat him. I suppose it wouldn't hurt. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm the one that's gonna kick your. Suzaku raised an eyebrow at the blonde's words. Do you honestly think you can defeat me? I'll admit you are rather strong, to have defeated the other 3 Saint Beasts without stopping to recuperate once. However, I am on an entirely different level than they are. That is why I am the leader of the Saint Beasts. You're not much of a leader when all of your subordinates are dead, Naruto pointed out with a sardonic grin. Seems to me like you're the leader of nothing now. It matters not, Suzaku said with a nonchalant shrug. New subordinates are always easy to find. Perhaps if I deem you worthy, you can be my new second in command. Yeah, I think I'm gonna pass, Naruto replied. There was a small frown marring his face. The man's callousness towards his now deceased subordinates bothered the blonde, even if he didn't let it show. You see, I have this aversion to working for those weaker than myself. Then I suppose this conversation is over, Suzaku said with a glare. It's time for you to die. He did not give Naruto a chance to make a return comment as he dashed forward. He was much faster than Naruto thought he would be, though not enough that the blonde couldn't keep up with him. The pair soon began trading blows as they closed the distance between each other. Suzaku launched several lightning-fast punches towards Naruto, who evaded those he could, and redirected those he couldn't by using his hands to subtly move the orange-haired demon's fists away from him. Suzaku took a single step back, before snapping his right leg up in a heel kick that would have caught Naruto in the chest, had the blonde not managed to twist his torso out of the way. In retaliation, the heir of Raizen tried to grab the extended leg so he could break it at the joints, but his opponent proved much faster than expected and snapped his leg back before launching it in another kick, this time towards Naruto's face. Leaning back ever so slightly, the foot missed Naruto's face by mere millimeters. He could actually feel the man's foot grazing his nose. And, though he couldn't be sure, the blonde was almost positive that the top layer of his epidermis. As Naruto came back up, he de-iced that he had enough of getting attacked and it was time to take the fight to Suzaku. The blonde started of light, launching a series of lightning-quick punches that were more designed towards feeling his opponent out, rather than actually doing any damage. He was not all that surprised when he saw Suzaku keeping pace, though it was clear to Naruto that it was only just. Though that could also be because Suzaku wasn't using Yuki to strengthen and enhance his body, which confused Naruto. However, he figured that Yuki manipulation simply wasn't the orange-haired man's specialty. Naruto had to admit to being impressed by the man's speed. While his punches were not that powerful, his speed was very impressive, and his reaction times were superb. Had the blonde not worked almost solely on speed and strength for his first week in Makai, then Suzaku would have actually been faster than him by a good margin. Thankfully Naruto Hinata worked on his speed, almost to the exclusion of everything else when it came to his physical performance. So he still had a speed advantage, even if it was slight. And he could always use Shundo if he needed a boost in speed. "You're pretty good," Suzaku said with a smirk as the two disengaged their battle. "It's been a while since I've fought an opponent capable of keeping up with me. Let's see how you do against my strongest attack." Lightning began covering Suzaku's hand as he charged towards the blonde once again. Enkoku Raijin Kenna, Storm of Torment. Naruto leapt away to dodge the incoming attack. He opened his mouth, about to comment on the patheticness of Suzaku's attack, only to grunt in pain as he fell to his knees. Gritting his teeth, the blonde felt the excess lightning strike him and sent jolts of pain through his nervous system. "What the hell? I know I dodged him. So how did he hit me?" Suzaku smirked at seeing the blonde get shocked by his attack. "I'm impressed that you're still alive after that. No one else has ever survived Maya Enkoku Raijin Kenna before. However, one more hit like that and you'll be finished." Naruto snorted as he stood up. While the attack had certainly stung like a bitch, it was nothing he couldn't handle. Even now he could feel his body healing up from the attack on his nerves. "Well, aren't you just full of yourself? Alright, let's see you do that again." With pleasure, Suzaku charged towards Naruto again. This time the blonde paid attention to the attack as the orange-haired demon threw his lightning-covered fist at him. Enkoku Raijin Ken. Once again Naruto dodged the attack, and once again he got shocked. He grit his teeth for a moment as he analyzed the attack. "I see, so even if you don't hit me you can still hurt me with that lightning of yours," the blonde said from where he was crouched, sparks of lightning coursing over him. A few electric discharges strung the ground around Naruto, breaking off chips of the floor and creating small cracks along the stone tile. "That's right," Suzaku said with a smirk. "You may be able to dodge my punches, but you can't dodge lightning. The streaks will attack the nearest person I'm fighting, and seeing as you're the only here that makes you the only target for them." Suzaku came at Naruto again, his fist once more covered in lightning. Enkoku Raijin Ken. This time Naruto didn't even bother to dodge as the orange-haired demon's lightning-covered fist hit him in the center of the chest. Rather than feel elation at hitting the blonde, Suzaku frowned as he felt something off. His eyes widened in surprise when the blonde disappeared in a puff of smoke and was replaced with a log. "What is this?" "Karawimi replacement technique, the ultimate escape jutsu," Naruto said from behind the last Saint Beast. Suzaku's eyes widened as he turned, and he was just in time to jump back as Naruto gave the spot he had been seconds previously a heel drop. The ground cracked under the power behind Naruto's attack, with small fissures and spider webs spreading out from the small crater that had formed. The blonde smirked. "I don't need to dodge or even block your attack when I can just replace myself." "And where did you get the log?" asked Suzaku, curious about the technique's application. Naruto shrugged. "I don't know, I don't question where the log comes from. I just know that should I ever be in need, the log will heed my call and offer me its protection. For I am a child of the log." The blonde's answer didn't seem to satisfy Suzaku, who sneered at him. "Whatever, I don't care about some stupid log. It's time to kick this up a notch. Enkoku ya Rajin Prism of 7. Suzaku took a crouched stance and began to charge his Yuki. Naruto watched on in interest, raising an eyebrow when the orange-haired demon began to multiply, 2 at a time, until there were a total of 7 Suzakus. "Since you can just replace yourself with something whenever I hit you, I'll just make sure there are 7 of me to ensure that once you do that switching log ability of yours one of me will get you." "Clones. Hey, I can do that too. Akage Bunshin no Jutsu. What sort of trickery is this?" asked Suzaku, who gaped at seeing 7 Narutos now standing before him. "This is Maya cloning technique," Naruto said with a grin. "Face it, there is nothing that you can do that I can't do better." He saw the man's face twitching in both shock and outrage. Oh, how he loved taunting his opponents until they became sloppy. Suzaku sneered, "We'll see about that. Roku Goku Enkoku Reika Ha Prism of Storm Torment." Lightning began crackling in the hands of the 7 Suzakus, sparking brighter and brighter as the leader of the Saint Beasts began to gather more and more power. When the amount of lightning being generated seemed to reach a plateau, it began to morph and change shape. The lightning in the left hand of the Suzakus took on the shape of a bow, while the left looked like some kind of bolt or an arrow. It wasn't hard for Naruto to figure out what the man was going to use them for. His theory proved correct when all 7 Suzakus cocked their arrows on the bows and took aim at him. As the lightning arrows flew towards him, Naruto remained where he was as he thought up a plan to defeat the technique. Hey, let's see, those arrows likely have the same ability as Hisa Enkoku Raijin Ken, meaning even if I dodge I'll still get hurt by the lightning they let off. I coulda Kawari me, but where's the fun in that? He thought out a few different scenarios before coming up with a plan that was simple, but one he thought would be effective. Naruto began charging much more Yuki into his hands than he had the entire time he had been in Mei's castle. He crossed his arms in and crossed guard, as red and black sparks of energy began flying off of him. When the lightning arrows were less than a meter away from him, the blonde demon shinobi threw his hands out wide and unleashed a powerful wave of energy that engulfed the arrows, which dispersed under the intensity of Naruto's attack. If you want to actually hurt me, you're going to have to do better than that, Naruto said with a grin. Suzaku's eyes went wide at seeing his attack defeated so easily. However, his surprise soon gave way to a fierce glare as he looked at Naruto with rage. You want more power? Fine, try this on for size. Suzaku dispelled his 7 copies, which were more or less useless now that he knew his opponent could create copies of himself as well. As the copies returned to his body, Suzaku's power began to pulse and he was restored to perfect health. He raised his arm towards the ceiling and another bolt of lightning shot down from the thunderstorm and enveloped him, raised his energy level even higher than before. An intense aura of yellow lightning now coursed around his body. Can you see it now? Asked Suzaku with a smirk. Can you finally see how outclassed you are? However, when Suzaku looked at his opponent he face-faulted at seeing the blonde picking at his ear and not even paying attention to him. Are you listening to me? Naruto took his pinky out of his ear and flicked the small amount of ear wax off his finger. Nope, sorry, your rambling was just so boring I couldn't pay attention. Maybe if you were a little more original I would, but as you are now. Suzaku grit his teeth. That does it, I've had it up to here with you. It's time for you to die. Suzaku shot forward, his speed having increased to the point where it looked like he had blurred out of existence. He appeared right before Naruto with a large smirk, and sent a powerful punch to the blonde's face, expecting the demon shinobi to get sent flying. What he got was Naruto's head turning ever so slightly. Eyes widening in surprise, Suzaku began launching assault after assault on the blonde Uzumaki. He kicked, punched, kneed, elbowed and even gave the blonde a powerful headbutt. However, none of the attacks did any damage, and Naruto just stood there, looking at Suzaku with an impassive expression. Are you done? Asked Naruto, his face blank as he looked at the shocked demon in front of him. Because if so then it's my turn. Before Suzaku knew what he was sent flying backwards with a jaw-shattering punch to the face. As his body flew parallel to the ground, Naruto appeared behind him and waited for just the right second to act. The blonde kicked him in the back of the head, and due to the fact that he had been flying parallel to the ground, Suzaku was sent flying up towards the ceiling. Once again, the blonde demon shinobi appeared in front of the orange-haired demon, standing on the ceiling in a crouched position. His feet were spread apart and his left fist was cocked back. He began channeling massive amounts of energy into his hand, causing red and black lightning to crackle into existence. This is the end, Naruto shouted as he threw his fist at Suzaku. The punch connected to the other man's face, and there was a single moment in which time seemed to stand still. It quickly began again as a large explosion of demonic Yuki blew out of Naruto's fist. Suzaku didn't even have time to scream in pain as the energy washed over him. Of course, Naruto being Naruto ended up overdoing his attack, and the Yuki continued on unabated. It crashed through the tower, destroying floor after floor as it plowed towards the ground. When it hit the first story the entire castle maze shook, right before a large explosion overtook it. On the outside Kyuubi stood where she had first shown Naruto the maze castle, where she watched the entire structure collapse. It was an odd sight. First the very top of the castle fell in onto the second. This was followed by the second falling onto the third part of the castle, which was followed by the fourth and so on. The buttresses all fell away as the stone structure broke apart. It was like watching a stack of cards toppling to the ground. As if someone were trying to bring a whole new meaning to the words, overkill. As soon as the entire structure had collapsed in on itself, a large explosion overtook the entire debris-ridden castle. Much like a nuclear warhead going off, a large mushroom-shaped cloud of smoke rose into the air, looking very ominous in its dark reddish-black color. When the mushroom cloud of smoke, dust and falling debris cleared, where Mei's castle once stood was a large, nearly 80-meter wide crater. Geez, Naruto-sama, Kyuubi muttered as she looked at the destruction. Put a little more power into your attacks, why don't you? No need to be so sarcastic. Hugh-chan, Naruto's voice came from behind her, causing Kyuubi to whirl around and clutch her chest. I didn't even feel him sneak up on me. She thought in shock, right before she got angry. Damn it, Naruto-sama. Don't sneak up on me like that. Sorry, Naruto said with a smile. He walked over to her and before the vixen could say anything else he placed his mouth over hers. Kyuubi's eyes slowly fluttered closed as she leaned into the kiss. Her arms slid themselves around the blonde's neck as she pressed her body closer to his, ensuring that there was no space between them. She could feel her body respond to his as he deepened the kiss. It felt like she was on fire. Her nipples were hardened nubs and she couldn't help but moan when they rubbed against Naruto's chest through the fabric of her kimono. She could feel her getting wet, the spot between her legs blazing like a furnace to match her aroused state. "En Naruto-sama," Kyuubi moaned as Naruto pulled out of the kiss, only to attack her neck. He kissed up and down her swan-like neck, before stopping just a little below her right ear when she produced a loud moan. His mouth latched onto her neck more forcefully as he began to suck and bite that area. He would have smirked as he heard Kyuubi's cries of pleasure getting louder had he not had his mouth currently occupied. As it was he settled for bringing the redhead to utter bliss with his ministrations. He took his mouth off only after he was satisfied by the shiny red love bite he had left on her tender and flawless skin. "You promised me a kiss after I completed your final test," Naruto whispered in her ear, his voice taking on a husky growl. Kyuubi shivered at that tone. The dominating and sexual overtones were almost too much to bear. She knew that it would only take him another push or two before she jumped the blonde right there. "Gee, that is true," she got out before another moan escaped her throat. This one caused by Naruto cupping and fondling her tight, firm and shapely rear. But that was only if you impress me." "Oh," Naruto said as he halted his suckling, which had reached her collarbone by now. He played with the neckline of her kimono, which was slightly off kilter from him moving it aside so he could continue to work her over. "And did I no impress you, Q-chan?" "No you did but, we need to wait until we get. Kyuubi tried to get out, but when she felt one of Naruto's hands slide into her kimono and begin groping her, which was completely open to him as Kyuubi disliked wearing a bra. Her mind blanked for an instant as she felt his calloused fingers caressing her bare flesh, making Kyuubi shiver at his warm touch. His thumbs ran over her hardened nipples, sending jots of pleasure from her chest and even to her nether regions. "Get?" asked Naruto as he continued exploring Kyuubi's body, relishing in the feel of her perfectly round. "Get where, Kyuubi-chan? Get to your new mansion now," shouted Kyuubi, surprising the blonde. He only had enough time to blink before the vixen grabbed him and they both disappeared in a flash of fire. The next morning the pair woke up feeling content and sated from their activities the other night. They both decided to have breakfast in bed, as Naruto created several clones to cook for them. Contrary to popular belief, Naruto could cook, and cook well. When he had first gotten his apartment, Sarutobi had actually hired someone to help teach the blonde how to cook, paying them what would amount to a D-rank mission. The only reason Naruto ate ramen was because it was fast, cheap, and tasted good. And when you're charged with extra taxes that triple the amount you need to pay when buying necessities, you don't really think about things like how healthy the food is, or how fashionable the clothes you buy are. While his clones were down in the kitchen making food, Naruto was resting his back against the headboard of the bed. Kyuubi was laying on her side, snuggled deeply in his chest and purring contentedly as the blonde demon shinobi ran his hands along her side. "So this is where you used to live?" asked Naruto as he looked around the room. Now that his lust was sated and Kyuubi was no longer trying to jump him, he took a good look around the stately room. It was rather large, with sweeping Corinthian-style columns running along the walls. On the opposite side of the bed were two doors, one a standard door with a handle, which Naruto assumed led to a bathroom. The other was a sliding door that no doubt led to a closet. Along his right was another sliding door, this one made entirely of what looked like crystal. It led to an outside balcony that overlooked a garden in the backyard and had expensive-looking patio furniture. "Yes," Kyuubi said as she breathed in his scent. She exhaled slowly, enjoying every moment she spent with Naruto. She had never felt this content before. "I had this mansion built when I became Raizen-sama's second-in-command. That was around 500 years ago." Naruto nodded. "So I'm guessing this is your room." "No, it's yours," Kyuubi said, surprising the blonde. She looked up to see him looking at her with idle curiosity tinged with surprise. She giggled a little before saying, "You are not only my master, Naruto-sama, but my mate as well. Everything I have is yours. This room, this house, even my clan will be at your disposal once you decide to make your presence known to the people of Makai." "You mean when I take my place as the third demon king?" asked Naruto with a frown. "Yes, though you will want to be careful. After Raizen-sama died, the other two demon kings pounced on the chance to control your ancestors' land. They even went so far as to team up just so they could defeat me and my clan. But we have several advantages, don't we? Said Naruto, thinking hard. I mean, they don't know that Raizen ever had a child, because he married a human and she gave birth in the human world. Also, from what you've told me about the Demon Kings, none of them ever got along with each other, and only knowing that should two of the three fight to the death, the last one would jump at the opportunity to kill them both and claim control was really the only thing stopping them from outright war. This means any pact the current two kings made would be null and void as soon as they finished their objective in defeating your clan and those under your clan's control. Yes, that is correct, Naruto-sama, Kyuubi said, seemingly pleased that Naruto had been listening to her lectures enough to figure all of that out. In fact, we're off even better than that. Not only do they not know about you, but they also don't know I'm still around. Many assumed I died in the final battle, with only the Demon Kings knowing I escaped. However, they believe that I ended up losing my life sometime along the line due to lingering injuries. Injuries? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow. Hi, I was rather badly injured in that battle, Kyuubi said. In a one-on-one fight, I can hold my own against any one of the Demon Kings, with the sole exception of Raizen-sama. However, in a two-on-one fight I stand no chance. Only Raizen ever had the power to beat two Demon Kings at once. In any event, not only do they not know of our existence, but they themselves are at war with each other. There was a large grin that threatened to split Kyuubi's face as she said this. It seems that, after they won and claimed Raizen-sama's territory as their own, the two ended up arguing over who would get what. They are currently having periodic on and off warfare with each other. Which means unless rumor of our existence reaches them, they won't do anything, Naruto concluded. Exactly. Naruto nodded as the door to their room opened and several clones came in with two large trays of food. The blonde grinned at seeing the three large stacks of pancakes on his plate, with a side of bacon and some kind of juice though he couldn't tell what it was. Alright, I'm starving. Kyuubi watched in amusement as Naruto began scarfing down his food. She grabbed her fork and knife and daintily cut off a piece from one of own pancakes and placed it in her mouth. The pair were silent as they ate. Naruto finished first, having more or less shoved the food down his throat in an effort to satiate his ravenous hunger. When he finished, the blonde sighed and leaned back while placed his arms behind his head. Kyuubi finished a few moments later, and when she did Naruto decided to ask her the question that had been on his mind. Hey, Q-chan, I was wondering, you've mentioned how you're powerful enough to stand on equal grounds with the two Demon Kings. So how powerful are you? And how powerful is that in comparison with other demons? Kyuubi set down her utensils and scooted back so she could snuggle with Naruto. I never did go into demonic power levels very much, did I? She asked rhetorically. Well, to start, I'll go into an overview of the different power levels and classes that demons have. The first class amongst demons is E-class. The weakest class of all. Demons of this strength aren't strong or smart but they are very violent. However, their strength is just above that of a genin level shinobi. D-class is the second to lowest class. Like E-class demons, with a few notable exceptions they are not very intelligent or exceptionally powerful, but their strength and endurance is superhuman compared to an average shinobi. In fact, these would be around the level of an experienced chunin. However, compared to most demons they are very weak. The third class are C-class demons. This is about average strength for most demons. They're stronger than the E's and D's but their power pales in comparison to the stronger classes. These demons are very common and are relatively abundant in the demon world. That's the same level of those Saint Beast guys I defeated, right? Asked Naruto. With the exception of Suzaku, who was B-class, yes, Kyuubi said with a nod. Now the next class are the B-class demons. This class is where the strength level skyrockets and is the beginning of the upper class demon strength, where the difference between two classes is absolutely enormous. B classes are far more powerful than C classes, but they still can't compete with the higher classes. However, they are more than enough for a human. In fact, a B-class demon has equal strength to your village's cages. So every B-class demon is on par with an S-ranked shinobi. Asked Naruto. Yes. Naruto frowned. How come we haven't had any threats from these demons then? If they were that powerful I would assume they would love to come into the human world to wreak havoc. They would, Kyuubi admitted. But they don't because of us demon lords. While I lived in Makai for most of my life, the other 8 lords preferred the human world. The other demon lords are very territorial and would kill all demons that they felt enter their domain on sight. Though most of us are sealed now, I suspect that when the demons in Makai learn of this, the human world will have an influx of demons entering it. Anyways, the second to highest class are the A-class demons. These demons are exceptionally powerful, more than capable of destroying a human settlement or killing a 100s ranked shinobi without receiving even a scratch. However, compared to the power of a and S-class demon they are very weak, so weak in fact that they are used as mere foot soldiers of the three kings. S-classes are the highest class, they are the pinnacle of power in the demon world. They are so strong that even a low S-class strength can completely devastate a large area. In demon world, they are rare, with only about 20 ever known. It is extremely rare for even AA class achieve this level, while a strong A class was noted to start to get close and that would achieve upper S class in less than 2 years. A single S class is strong enough to defeat a horde of 500 upper classes by themselves with relatively little effort. Now, the demon lords are between lower A and upper S class in strength. Ikibi and the Nibi are both lower A class. Sanbi and Yonbi are middle A, while Gobi is upper A class. Rokubi and Nanabi are lower S class, and Hachibi is middle S class. I myself am upper S class. So then you're on par with Raizen Oji-san, right? Asked Naruto. I mean, he was upper S as well, wasn't he? Kyuubi shook her head. No, in his prime, Raizen-sama was on an entirely different level than anyone else. In fact, while it was never made official, Raizen-sama was so powerful that many demons gave him the classification of SS class, simply because he was so powerful. His power was so great, that he could easily kill 4 or 5 upper S class demons with relative ease. If you want another example of his strength, we can use power levels. I myself hold a power level of 1,560,000, which is slightly above average power for an upper S class demon. In his prime, Raizen-sama had a power level of 4,056,000. It was said that he was so powerful, that if he wanted he could have destroyed the world 7 times over. Naruto took in this information with a nod, not letting on how surprised he was to know that Raizen was so powerful. He had of course realized that Raizen was strong, he would have to have Kyuubi respect the man so much. But to think that he was that strong was just unbelievable. What would I be? Right now your power is about 1,600,000, Kyuubi answered. Much of that is sealed off, however, due to you not being able to control your power. At those words, Naruto looked down to see the metal band on his left forearm. It was very beautiful, with an intricate design of the same patterns that made up Raizen's eye tattoo. However, the design itself was used to hide a very powerful set of demonic runes that bound Naruto's power down to a more manageable level. Right now, Kyuubi continued, and the blonde turned his gaze from the wristband to her. With your powers sealed, you only have the strength of an A- class demon, about 450,000. Eventually, we will be able to slowly release your power back to you as you gain better and better control over it. Raizen-sama claimed that you had the power to surpass him. Do you think I can? Asked Naruto. You definitely have an advantage over him, Kyuubi stated. Naruto looked at her in confusion, which the redhead noticed and decided to further explain. What I mean is, Raizen-sama needed to eat humans to keep his strength. When he fell in love and promised to never eat another human, he began losing that strength and withering away. When he died, his strength was only around 1,332,000. She paused for a moment before smiling. You on the other hand are 1/3 human, and thus do not require feasting on humans for sustenance. That means you won't need to eat humans to keep your strength up, or gain any more. Naruto nodded. It was a roundabout way of answering his question, but he got the gist of what she was saying. Since he didn't have to eat humans like most demons did to keep their strength, he didn't have their limitations. All he required to get more powerful was to train and fight. What about you? Asked Naruto as he suddenly realized something. Do you have to eat humans? No, Kyuubi replied with a shake of her head. I'm not like most demons. Aside from the fact that I am a kitsune, I am also one of 9 lords that received their power from an outside source. Outside source? You mean when you became the Kyuubi, right? Kyuubi nodded. Yes, myself and 8 other lower class demons that had been in the human world at the time were all struck by that power. I gained the most, and therefore was the one who became the Kyuubi. Because we were lower level demons when we received our power, we didn't need to feast on humans to keep it. Our Yuki sustains us indefinitely, though we can eat regular food if we want. Naruto nodded at her answer as a clone came up and took their trays away. He chuckled a bit when he heard it grumble about lazy blonde bastards and lucky originals. It was always amusing to hear his clones complain. Because Cage Bunchins were a literal copy of the original, they had the same independent thought and emotional range as the person who created them. Which was why all Naruto's clones hated his guts when he was with Kyuubi. So what are we going to do now that my training is more or less complete? Asked Naruto. We only have 2 days before the 1-month training period before the Chunin exams are up, Kyuubi answered. So we'll be heading back to the human world soon. Tomorrow I think, that way we can make plans for some more training. More training? Asked Naruto. I thought we were more or less done training. To gain any more power now, all I really need to do is battle. Unless of course, we're talking about elemental training. No, no elemental training yet, Kyuubi replied, making Naruto pout. I suppose training isn't quite the word I should use. Tell me, what do you know about summoning contracts? Not much, Naruto admitted with a sheepish look. I know that it's a contract between you and a clan of animals, and that depending on the contract you sign will depend on the type of animal you can summon. But other than that, he trailed off at the end. Kyuubi nodded, having already expected as much. You seem to understand the basics. By signing a summoning contract in your blood, you will be able to summon a clan of animals via sacrificing a little of your blood and doing the required hand seals. What humans don't know is that the summoning clans are not animals but demons. They are lesser-known demons known as dire beasts, and vary in power, with boss summons being high C to low B class, and others being C and below. The redhead watched as Naruto nodded and took in the knowledge for later use. She smiled as she thought of the bomb she was just about to drop on him. I was thinking about these contracts, and decided that none of the current contracts available would suit you. Therefore, I plan on making one for the Kitsune clan. Naruto blinked several times as he digested what she had just told him. The ramifications of having the Kitsune clan as his personal summons were huge, not just in the demon world but the human one as well. Due to how Kyuubi was perceived by people in the elemental nations, she didn't have a very good reputation. This stigma extended to all Kitsune, even normal non-demon foxes. He could only imagine the amount shit he would get for being capable of summoning Kitsune from the people of Konoha. Not that this issue particularly mattered to him, but he didn't want to be forced to kill every fool who decided to insult him. No, his main thoughts were on the making of the contract himself. From what he knew, the summoning contracts had been created around the time of the Raikudo Sennin. They were supposed to be incredibly complex pieces of Fuwa Enjutsu. Naruto doubted that even the Yondaime could recreate a summoning contract. Do you even know how to make a contract? Asked Naruto. No, Kyuubi admitted, scratching the back of her head. If Naruto hadn't been laying down he would have face faulted. As it was he merely sweat dropped. Then how do you plan on making a contract? There are contracts in existence, Kyuubi said with a shrug. We'll just study one and use it as our base. You know Fuwa Enjutsu, correct? Not on that level, Naruto said. I've studied, and I'm decent at making seals. But I'm only beginning to enter the intermediate level of Fuwa Enjutsu study. I don't even think the Yondaime Hokage could create a summoning contract from scratch, and he was the premier Fuwa Enjutsu master of the world. Yes, but he didn't have me, now did he? Asked Kyuubi with a grin. I may not know Fuwa Enjutsu, but I have a perfect memory. I only need one glance at a contract and I can recreate it. The only problem will be modifying the contract for Kitsune. That's where you come in. We'll just rearrange the Fuwa Enjutsu until we get what we want. I suppose that could work, Naruto said pensively. It would take a bit of work on our part, but with a little luck and a whole lot of skill we could conceivably make a contract for your clan. He sighed as he realized something. I'm going to have to study summoning contracts more closely so I know what's needed outside of just the contract itself. Which is why we're going to deal with that after the Chunin exams, Kyuubi said before grinning at him seductively. She swung a leg over Naruto and was soon straddling his waist. Her hands went to his languid sword and began to pump it until it hardened and reached full mast. Now, I'm done talking about training and summoning, Kyuubi said with a purr. Make me feel good. Naruto found a grin make its way onto his face as he guided Kyuubi to his entrance. Summoning, training and the Chunin exams could wait. Right now, he had a horny vixen to please. Tsuchi-kin had never felt so much pain before in her life. It had all started after her failure in the preliminary portion of the Chunin exams, when she had faced off and lost to one Nara Shikamaru. She had known right then that she was done for as long as she stayed with Otogakur. Orochimaru did not take failure lightly, and punished those who did. She could clearly remember several instances where members of Otogakur's ninja force had failed or displeased their leader. Those that weren't outright killed were used in the Hubby Sanin's vile experiments. She, along with everyone else, greatly feared failing, knowing that was what awaited them. When Kin had failed, the first thing she had done was try to escape Konoha before anyone was aware of her leaving. She had failed, and was caught by one Yakushi Kabuto, who she learned was secretly working for Orochimaru as his top spy. She remembered how he had chided her, telling her how unbecoming it was that she would try to escape her just punishment for failing Orochimaru-sama. He had captured her before she could even make an attempt at escaping. As the first stage of her punishment for her failure, Kin had been given to the Jonin of Otogakur as their plaything. Because Oto was not only a new village, but also one made largely from missing nin, their Jonin population was small. All total there were only about 50 Jonin, with around 40 of them being male. However, 40 Jonin using her in any way they wished was more than enough to cause Kin to suffer untold amounts of pain, agony, and humiliation. When they first started playing with her, she had tried to resist, putting up as much of a struggle as she could. But she was only a genin, and not even that strong of one. Her sensei had never taught her much beyond the basics of genjutsu and taijutsu, and her abilities in hand-to-hand were subpar as it was not her specialty. Kin knew why he didn't teach her much now. It hadn't been difficult to figure out after her failure. She and her teammates had been nothing more than fodder, pawns to be used and disposed of when Orochimaru no longer needed them. Their original purpose, Kabuto had told her, was to be killed by Uchiha Sasuke to test how powerful his cursed seal state was. Since she had survived and not passed the prelims, Orochimaru had decided she was no longer needed. She couldn't tell how many times the Jonin of her village had raped her, using every hole she possessed to please themselves. During the first few hours she could remember how painful it was. Despite being a kunoichi for a village like Oto, she had managed to retain her virginity, which was a surprising feat as most of the older ninja were all missing ninja and had no scruples towards raping their fellow comrades in order to please themselves. Many of the older kunoichi had already been raped, and a few had even been killed attempting to escape. That was the main reason most of Otogakur was made up of males, and only the really strong females with a few exceptions survived the trials by being a shinobi for the village. Because that and the brutality with which her virginity was taken, she had been in a constant state of pain for hours. That pain had not dulled since her punishment began. However, in order to deal with horrible acts being committed upon her, Kin's mind had forced itself to shut down. She was still semi-aware of her surroundings, could still see, smell, hear and taste. But her mind was not really registering any of what her senses were telling her. She was for all intents and purposes, a vegetable. Above her 2 Jonin had just finished gang raping her, one having abused her vagina and the other had used her mouth. As they pulled up their pants, one of them looked at the more or less comatose Kin and sighed. Man, it's such a shame that we've got to rid of such a fine piece of meat. She's pretty much used up anyways, the other said. Look at her, she's practically a zombie now. They're no fun if I can't listen to them scream. Besides, orders are orders and Orochimaru-sama needs her for his jutsu that he's going to use. Yeah, I know, he's got this big bad jutsu that requires a living sacrifice and is going to use it to help raise Konoha to the ground. The first one said, I wish I knew what jutsu he was going to use, it sounds powerful. Not like you could use it even if you knew, the other Jonin said with a roll of his eyes. Let's just get her in the coffin. By now the other 2 have to be in theirs. I'd say we lucked out when we were the ones ordered to put her in the coffin. At least we got one last good out of her. Whatever, the other ninja said with a grunt. Kin heard and saw everything, even if her mind could not process what she was seeing or hearing. However, just as the man was about to lift her up and set her into the coffin she was next to, something happened, which made her mind start. Blood splashed against her face and body from the man who had been about to grab her by the ankles. Said ninja was gaping at a hand that could be seen sticking through his chest, clutching his slowly beating heart. With a simple squeeze the heart was crushed, and the man's eyes dimmed before the hand pulled itself out and the Jonin fell to the ground. The last thing Kin saw before darkness claimed her, was a head of bright golden hair and 2 cerulean blue eyes. An hour earlier, you sure you don't want to come? Asked Naruto as he looked at Kyuubi who had just finished the ritual to open the portal to the human world. They had decided at the last moment that Naruto would go on ahead to the human world, while Kyuubi would stay in Makai for a few more days, getting in contact with the Kitsune clan so they could know of his existence and Kyuubi's safety, and begin rebuilding their clan. She had told him that she would find him again in about a week's time, something that Naruto didn't really like as he had begun to cherish his time with the vixen. Especially the, you and I both know I can't come with you yet, Kyuubi said patiently. Truth be told she didn't really want him to leave her either. Even though they had been running like Kitsune in heat all day yesterday, she still didn't feel it was enough to truly satisfy her. Again, that was just that good. I don't know, Naruto said with a smirk. You came plenty of times with me yesterday. Ha ha, Kyuubi laughed in a sarcastic manner. Your juvenile form of comedy is duly noted. Now, you need to leave or you may end up being late for the Chunin exams. Right, and the last thing I want to have to do is pull a Kakashi, Naruto said with a sigh. Somewhere outside of Konoha said one-eyed Cyclops sneezed loudly. He wiped his masked nose for a moment, hoping the person talking about him was Jiraiya talking about making him a character in the man's new book. He shrugged a moment later before getting back to teaching Sasuke. At least you have a better excuse than he does, Kyuubi replied with a grin. Naruto chuckled. Yeah, I can just imagine how everyone would react when I said, sorry I'm late, I spent so much time fucking my super hot mate that I forgot the time. Hey, that would go over real well. Most people probably wouldn't even believe me. Maybe if you still looked like a chibi, Kyuubi retorted. With your new looks I dare say any woman worth her weight would jump you in less than a second. Maybe, Naruto said. He was silent a moment later. Kyuubi watched his eyes gain a thoughtful look, tilting her head in curiosity as he turned his head and gazed at her with an unreadable expression. Her curiosity turned into surprise and she let out a small yelp as Naruto grabbed her by the hips and pulled her into a kiss. It wasn't the steamy, hot smoldering kisses they had shared the past few days. This one was soft, tender, and seemed to carry enough emotions that Kyuubi felt her toes curl and her knees grow weak. When the kiss ended, Naruto hugged her tightly. You know, I never in a million years thought I would say this, but I'm really going to miss you. Kyuubi sighed as she nuzzled herself into the blonde's muscular torso and felt the natural warmth the blonde's body exuded encompass her. Having spent somewhere close to a month with the demon shinobi, she could honestly claim that he was an even better man a demon than even Raizen-sama had been. He was kind, compassionate, understanding and caring to people he liked. That he counted her as one of those people and didn't blame her for the death of his parents spoke very highly at how forgiving his nature was. But she knew he could be cold and ruthless as well, just as, if not more ruthless than even Raizen-sama had been before he had fallen in love. She hadn't seen much of it, but she did remember a few instances where he had been annoyed by the demons he had been killing. She clearly remembered one incident where she and Naruto had gotten into some seriously heavy petting, and they would have likely had right there on the plains of Makai, were it not for several demons that had shown up in their midst. Naruto had been rather furious at the interruption. The fact that he had a pitch tent the size of Konoha and no way to fix it as the moment had been ruined had probably contributed to his rage. He had not just destroyed the demons that attacked, but had captured them and tortured them to near insanity. As insane as a mindless demon could get. If Naruto would do that to someone who annoyed him for interrupting his playtime with her, what would he do when someone seriously pissed him off? The thought sent pleasurable chills up Kyuubi's spine. I'll miss you too, Naruto-sama, Kyuubi said. But it will only be for a week, then we'll be together again. She broke off the hug and took a few steps back, grinning at him. Perhaps when I get back we can have some good old-fashioned hello. Naruto shook his head in amusement. I didn't know there were different kinds of. Oh, there's all kinds, Kyuubi said as she began ticking off different types off her fingers. All right, I get it, Naruto said, placing his hands up in a gesture of defeat. Now could you please stop mentioning, or else I'm going to you right here. I don't know if we have enough time for goodbye, Naruto-sama, Kyuubi said in a voice that was too innocent to be real. The rather seductive look on her face didn't help fix that. I mean, you take a rather long time to get off, what with your demonic stamina and all. If we had now, you would miss the entire final portion of the Chunin exams. I'm guessing this my cue to leave, Naruto mumbled with a light glare. You just be ready, because when we see each other again, I'm going to put our stamina to the test. Yes, Naruto-sama, Kyuubi replied happily as Naruto turned around and walked towards the portal leading to the human world. As Naruto stepped through the portal, the odd sensation of wading through jelly came to him. It wasn't as disorient as it was last time since he expected it, and the blonde came out on the other side without a problem. Naruto looked around and noted with some satisfaction that he was in the same clearing he and Kyuubi had been at when they first entered Makai. Kyuubi was definitely precise when it came to creating portals to open where she wanted. He took a moment to make 2 cage bunshin and ordered them to destroy the seals for the portal as Kyuubi had instructed. While they were decently hidden by the illusion his vixen had cast, she didn't like leaving things to chance and had only left the seals there because she couldn't create a cage bunshin and Naruto didn't know the proper method of destroying the seals back then and was more than likely to blow up the forest. Now that he did know how the seals were made and the method for destroying them, he would get rid of these ones and make a portal in his apartment, that way they could enter Makai without anyone stumbling upon the scene by accident. Once done, Naruto took the trees as he began his trek back to Konoha. It would only take an hour or two to get back, despite how far he was thanks to his newfound speed. As he was nearing Konoha however, Naruto saw something that he didn't remember seeing last time, and was very much out of place in the forest. A small man-made bunker that was dark brown in color and looked as if it had been created by a Dodenjutsu had been built just a few meters from the clearing he had re-entered Makai from. Which in his mind just lent credence to Kyuubi's desire to get rid of the seals. There were several ninja walking around the perimeter, and all of them were wearing the Otogakur headband. What are Oto ninja doing in Konoha territory? Wondered Naruto as he used his skills in stealth to sneak closer to the base. The bunker was circular and rather small, around 30 feet in diameter all told. There were 6 guards surrounding the bunker, with 1 in the back, left and right, 1 walking around a little further out, and finally, 2 standing at the entrance. Naruto realized rather quickly that something was definitely wrong. While he had never paid much attention to Ruka's lectures, there were some bits and pieces of information that managed to penetrate his back then thick skull. One of those nuggets of knowledge was that it was illegal for any foreign shinobi presence to be in Konoha territory without permission from Konoha. And while Naruto knew that most ninja villages likely disregarded that rule in order to gain information on Konoha's defenses, they were also supposed to be stealthy about it. Creating a bunker in Konoha territory had all the stealth of Kyuubi if she were to waltz into Konoha in her demon form. Wanting to know what these Oto ninja were doing in Konoha territory, as well as feeling particularly bloodthirsty today, he decided to go and get his answers. The first ninja he came up to was the one walking around the perimeter. Naruto had waited until the ninja had been hidden from sight of the others behind some foliage, then placed his hands on the ninja's head and mouth and snapped the man's neck. He quickly memorized the dead ninja features before hanging into him. He created a clone with orders to take the body somewhere far away and destroy, before he began the rounds that the Oto ninja had been using. During his rounds, Naruto would create several clones each time he was hidden from view, and ordered them to go underground and move until they were behind the ninja guarding the structure. Seemingly on an unspoken signal, the 5 clones rose up from the ground and killed the 5 enemy ninja by either stabbing them in the heart or throat with their now clawed hands, snapping their neck as the original had done, and one particularly creative clone had ripped the man's head off with the Oto ninja's spinal cord being taken with it. Naruto had actually taken a moment to note that clone's technique, and decided the way he had killed his enemy had been awesome and Naruto would need to try it as well. As the clones dispelled, Naruto went up to the door and pressed his ear against it to see if anyone was in there. What he got was a surprisingly informative conversation. "Man, it's such a shame that we've got to rid of such a fine piece of meat. She's pretty much used up anyways. Look at her, she's practically a zombie now. They're no fun if I can't listen to them scream. Besides, orders are orders and Orochimaru-sama needs her for his jutsu that he's going to use." Yeah, I know, he's got this big bad jutsu that requires a living sacrifice and is going to use it to help raise Konoha to the ground. I wish I knew what jutsu he was going to use, it sounds powerful. Not like you could use it even if you knew. Let's just get her in the coffin. By now the other 2 have to be in theirs. I'd say we lucked out when we were the ones ordered to put her in the coffin. At least we got one last good out of her. Whatever. From the sounds of what he had heard, the 2 in the room had been raping someone who was going to be used as a sacrifice for some jutsu Orochimaru was going to do. And said jutsu was also supposed to help him destroy Konoha. That mere fact alone was more than enough to help Naruto make a decision on what to do. Hearing that the 2 men had been raping whoever was in there with him was just the icing on their proverbial shit cake. Naruto blew the door 2 pieces with a well-laced, Yuki-enhanced punch. Before either of the 2 jonin inside knew what was going on, one of them was knocked out with a kick to the head. And another was killed when Naruto rammed a hand through his back and ripped his heart out through his chest, then crushed the slowly beating organ. Naruto pulled his hand out of the now dead shinobi and turned to the other occupant in the room. He recognized her as one of the Oto competitors for the Chunin exams, though she looked like she had seen better days. Aside from the lifeless stare, Kin's entire body was covered in cuts and bruises. What part he could see that wasn't covered in semen at least? The blonde's fists clenched a bit at seeing the state of the girl. Weren't these men her comrades? People who were supposed to protect her? While it was true there was no real honor among ninja, there were certain codes that most ninja abide by, protecting and helping your comrades was one of them. Or so Naruto assumed. The thought that someone would do something like rape a member of their own village was enough to make him feel that the people he just killed got off far too lightly. However, he reined in his desire to pull the Oto ninja back from the dead using the ghetto outer path just so he could torture them some more. Instead he went over to Kin and used the only water jutsu he knew, one that Kyuubi had taught to him as a reward for getting so far in her training, to wash off the semen. He had to power it down greatly since the jutsu, which was more of a water manipulation as it didn't require hand signs, was designed to kill opponents by drilling them with a powerful drill made of water. For this he blunted the edge and used less than 1/8 the amount of chakra he normally would. When he had finished cleaning her off he unsealed one of his extra cloaks, a nondescript travel cloak in a light beige color. He quickly wrapped the girl in it and created a clone. Get her to the nearest hospital you can. Before he had run afoul of this place, he had passed a village, and that meant they likely had a hospital. When you get her there I want you to stay with her until I return. If she wakes up before then let her know what is going on. Got it. He knew that his clone already knew what had wanted, but for some reason felt about giving it an order. Hi, Oyabunt boss, the Cage Bunshin replied before scooping Kin into his arms and taking off. Naruto watched the clone leave before going over to the unconscious Jonin. After tying him up with some rope Naruto found lying around, the blonde demon shinobi woke him up with a kick. The man's eyes snapped open with a start and he let out a yelp as Naruto kicked him in the ribs a second time. The man looked around for a moment, before they found Naruto, and then he felt like soiling himself. The blonde had released some of his Yuki, enough to change his basic form into something fierce. His hands were now clawed and his fangs had lengthened. There was a dark red and black aura surrounding Naruto as his Yuki came out of him in waves. But the worst thing, the very worst thing, were the eyes. A silver ripple-like pattern over the eyes, with a cerulean blue pupil and sclera. Before anything else could happen, Naruto placed his hand on the shinobi's head, making the man freeze on contact, unable to move, and scarcely able to breathe. Now, Naruto said in a voice that actually did make the man soil himself. You will tell me everything you know about Orochimaru and his plan to destroy Konoha. Sakuchi Akira was a well-respected jonin in Orochimaru's ninja forces. He had been a respectable B-rank missing nin before joining Otogaku, and while he was not as high up as some, he was higher than most. His power and ability had been recognized by Orochimaru after he had successfully managed to accomplish every mission the man had given to him. That was why he had been one of the ninja selected to help lead the forces that were hidden amongst the civilians at the Chunin exam stadium. It was his job to help lead Otogaku's ninja in an attack on the Konoha Jonin and Chunin who were able to break out of the genjutsu Kabuto would cast. Only Akira would never be able to accomplish his goal. The man was intercepted on his way to the stadium and had all of the information forcibly pried from his mind. After that, his soul was ripped from his body before being sent straight to hell. His body would be burnt and a cage bunshin would take his place. No one would ever know what happened to Sakuchi Akira but one person. It was a bright day in the Konohagakure no Sato. The sun's rays were falling upon the village, creating bright streams of light through the many trees that the village was named after. Children could be seen playing within the streets and teenagers and adults of all ages and genders were shopping for goods, while birds could be heard singing from above them. The sounds of cheering people could be heard all over the Hidden Leaf village as shinobi, civilian, nobles, and commoners alike had all gathered to witness the Chunin exam finals. As he looked over the village from his seat in the cage booth, Sarutobi Hijirin couldn't help but be pleased with the turnout. In one section of the stand sat the members of the newly dubbed Konoha 12, which consisted of the members of the newly famed Rookie 9, along with the members of Team Guy who hadn't made it to the finals. The name was given to them because of all of the genin of Konoha who had been placed in the Chunin exams, all 27 teams. It was the 4 rookie teams that passed the second stage and made it to the preliminary rounds. Sitting with them were the Jonin senseis of the teams, -1, each of them looking down at the students who had made it past the prelims in pride. On the arena floor 8 figures could be seen standing in a line facing the cage booth. 7 of those figures were the genin who were about to compete in their matches: Aburame Shino, Hyuga Neji, Nara Shikamaru, Uchiha Sasuke, Sabaku no Gaara, Sabaku no Tamari and Sabaku no Konkuro, with the last member being the jonin proctoring this match. The proctor, Shiranui Genma, had dark brown hair reaching to his neck, and brown eyes. He was wearing his forehead protector like a bandana, and the standard Nin outfit of dark blue pants and a long-sleeved blue shirt with his jonin flak jacket over it. Sarutobi frowned as he saw that they were missing 3 ninja, Kinuta Dosu, Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto. He knew that Dosu was dead, his corpse having been found by his Anbu just last night, and Uchiha Sasuke was with Kakashi, so it was a given that he would either make it at the last minute or turn up late. However, that Naruto was not standing down there was worrying. He knew the blonde would never miss a chance like this. Sarutobi couldn't help but wonder if something had happened to him. Sir, there is still no sign of Uchiha Sasuke, but we have a few squads searching for him, said a Junin before he leaned over to whisper into his cage's ear. Sir, do you think it's possible Orochimaru may have already gotten to the boy? Questioned the man. The Sandaime didn't let his subordinate know what he was thinking. With several decades of ninja experience he had learned the art of keeping his face emotionless. However, the thought that Orochimaru may already have gotten his hands on Sasuke was worrying. The boy had been with Kakashi, and while Sarutobi planned on having words with how the man had taken up favoritism with his squad, the Sharingan-toting Jonin was still one of his best shinobi. Before he could reply to the Jonin's words, however, he caught sight of a pair of white and blue robes out of the corner of his eye. Upon seeing them he turned to greet the arriving Kazekage. Kazekage Dono, you must be tired from the long journey, he greeted cordially. Not at all, the man replied in his calm manner as he sat down. Though it's a good thing the exams were held here this time. While you are still young the trip may have been too much for you, Hokage-sama. Perhaps it's time you choose a 5th. Sarutobi gave a hearty laugh, and waved the man's comments off. Please don't treat me like an old man. The fire in me still burns as strongly as it did 20 years ago. I've still got a few more years left before needing to find a successor. It seems we have 2 missing, said the Kazekage upon taking his seat, eyes roving over to the field. Yes, It seems as if young Sasuke and Naruto have not shown up. As things stand, I may have to disqualify them. However, they both have until the exams start to present themselves, so we will wait and see, said Sarutobi. As if summoned by his words, a very familiar voice spoke up behind him. You know, it's impolite to speak about someone who's right here. Everyone, from the Jonin guards to the two cages, jumped and spun around in surprise. There standing before them was none other than Naruto, and he had changed his look. It was only slightly different from the battle outfit he had been wearing in Makai. He had discarded his vest, making his extremely defined and muscular torso visible for all to see. But he still had his haori, shin and forearm guards, boots, skin-tight black pants, and fingerless gloves. He had also added a pair of sleek-looking sunglasses to his attire. This was so he didn't have to continuously use chakra to keep up the illusion over his eyes to hide his Rinnegan. He was also wearing the katana and wakizashi that had been on the mantle in his and Kyuubi's mansion. They were both sheathed on the left side of his waist, with only the handles being seen as they were hidden within his haori. The Jonin guards all pulled out their kunai and took up a stance around the two cages, mainly because no one except a few ninja knew of the changes Naruto had gone through and so didn't recognize him. Sarutobi, however, did, even if he was surprised by the blonde's newest growth spurt, and waved his guards down. The Jonin looked unsure but did as told, and a few moments later the cage did the same. Naruto-kun, my boy, you surprised me, Sarutobi said with a smile. He eyed the blonde's new to him a look. I like the new outfit. Meanwhile the cage was staring at Naruto with a frown hidden behind his mask. Thanks Oja-san, Naruto said with a grin. I think it's pretty kick too. Now, not that I'm not pleased to see you, but shouldn't you be down in the arena? Naruto had a rather large grin on his face as he spoke. Yeah, but I just wanted to see you first, and to tell you to put all your money on me since I plan on winning this thing. Oh, Sarutobi raised an eyebrow. Yep, so put some money on me to win the tournament, I guarantee you won't go wrong. Naruto walked over to and past the aging Hokage, his hand just barely ruffling the mon's cage robes. He went over to the edge, where people soon began to notice him and point. Turning, he gave the old man one last grin. I would ask you to wish me luck, but I won't need it to win this. With those words, Naruto spun around and jumped off the cage booth. Sarutobi shook his head and chuckled at Naruto's showboating, though he had a feeling the boy may actually be able to do just what he said and win the tournament. His instincts were screaming at him that the young blonde had gotten much stronger, and considering the fact that he looked even older and more powerful than he had a month ago, it was a safe assumption to make. His left hand went into his robes and pulled out the small note the blonde had stuck in them when he passed. He held it up to his eyes and read. The man sitting next to you is not the cage, but Orochimaru in disguise. He plans on using the third stage of the Chunin exams to launch an invasion with the aid of Suna. The sole purpose of it being the destruction of Konoha. He will use the match between Uchiha Sasuke and Sabaku no Gaara as the starting point of his invasion, where he will have his right-hand man, Yukushi Kabuto, cast a genjutsu over the entire stadium. There are over 50 Odo and Suna ninja hidden amongst the arena population, and they have several thousand men outside of the village walls. Orochimaru also plans on using a summoning circle, which is hidden in Konoha's forest to summon one of his snakes. Gaara will be the hammer that he uses to crush Konoha. He is a Jinchuriki for the Ikibi no Shukaku and can apparently go full demon mode. My suggestion is to pretend nothing is wrong. When Uchiha Sasuke is late, and considering who his sensei is we both know he will be, disqualify him. That will disrupt their plans long enough for you to somehow get a message to your forces to let them know what is going on and prepare. Other than that, and possibly evacuating the civilians to the shelters hidden in the Hokage faces, don't do anything. Also, the true cage is dead, killed by Orochimaru. I will find a way to inform Suna so they ally with us instead. And don't worry about Gaara, I'll handle him. Oh, put some money on me to win this thing. It was a credit to the skill and experience Sarutobi had as a ninja and cage that his face hadn't so much as twitched while reading Naruto's message, though on the inside his mind was going 100 miles a minute. The first thing he wondered was whether or not these words were true. And if so, how would he prove them? The second thing he was curious about was if it was true. Then how had Naruto found out about it? After thinking about the letter, Sarutobi realized there was too much coincidences for this not to be true. Orochimaru had shown himself during the preliminaries. Sarutobi knew his former student would never do such a thing without a good reason, and just showing up to mark Uchiha Sasuke would not be a good enough reason for him. No, the destruction of Konoha made much more sense. And even if that wasn't true, it never hurt to be prepared. He used a minor application of fire chakra to burn the message, an act which caught the attention of the cage. What was that letter, Hokage-sama? Oh, just Naruto-kun telling me how much I should put on him to win, Sarutobi said lightly. He seems rather confident, the Kazekage replied. However, I doubt he could defeat Gaara, or even your own Uchiha Sasuke in battle. Sarutobi said, eyeing the man out of the corner of his eyes. Perhaps, but Naruto-kun has always been full of surprises. Now then, I believe it is time for me to begin the Chunin exams. Naruto as he jumped off the cage booth, falling towards the ground face down. At the last second he flipped himself around, landing in a crouch as the earth under him buckled and cracked. He stood up and walked over to the other genin with a grin. Most of the genin were looking at him with a combination of shock and surprise. Well, Kankuro was looking at him in shock and surprise. Shino and Gaara were looking at him with their normal emotionless expressions, though Gaara's was tinged with a mixture of bloodlust and apprehension, an odd combination if there ever was one, and Shino's face was so hidden it was hard to even see his face. Shikamaru looked at him like he was the most troublesome thing in the world, and Naruto knew that was probably exactly what he was thinking too. Neji just had a sneer on his face. The thing that surprised him, and was in truth not so much of a surprise, were the looks he was receiving from the two females. Ino was currently staring at his chest, her face had a tinge of pink to it and her mouth was parted. She was also drooling. Naruto had trouble keeping the shiver that threatened to ruin his new bad persona he was trying to create. He knew that Ino was a fangirl. All throughout the academy she had been just as bad as Sakura in her stalking, fangirlish tendencies when it came to Naruto's male teammate. The last thing he wanted was for her to become a Hisa fangirl. She just didn't have the figure he was looking for in a woman. Temari was also looking at him, though she was much more discreet than the other blonde. However, Naruto could still see the light pink hue that ran across her cheeks. It was clear that she took her training more seriously, and cared about her professional image, but was not above admiring someone she thought was attractive. Naruto could appreciate her desire to be a kunoichi first and a woman second, at least when it mattered. As Naruto walked towards the group, he decided that since Temari was looking at him, turnabout was fair play. She hadn't changed her outfit since he had last seen her. Temari's blonde hair was still gathered into 4 ponytails. Her outfit still consisted of a single light purple-colored, off-the-shoulders garment that extended to halfway down her thighs, with a scarlet sash tied around her waist. In addition to incorporating fishnet worn over her shoulders and legs, specifically on her right calf and her left thigh, she also wore her headband around her neck. It was also hard not to notice the young teenage girl's budding assets, which were visible beneath her clothes. She was a few years older than him, and he could see that she was growing rather well. Her chest was not large, likely around a mid-C cup, but considering she was still young and had yet to get out of puberty she was rather impressive. Her body was lithe and toned, letting him know that she took care to keep herself in shape. With a narrow waist that tapered off into flared hips and strong-looking, toned thighs. She was a nice combination of strength and feminine beauty. She didn't have Kyuubi's perfection, nor the redhead's near-overpowering sexuality, which oftentimes drove Naruto insane, in a good way. But there was something to be said about Temari's more simple beauty. It seemed she noticed him admiring her, because she took a moment to look away from his body and meet his eyes. He smirked, letting her know that he knew she was looking at him, causing her to turn away. The action just caused his smirk to widen. I apologize if I'm a little late, Naruto said to Genma as he reached speaking distance. I was outside of Konoha and it took longer than I expected to get back. You're not late, Genma said. Actually, you're right on time. Get in line so we can start this thing. Right, Naruto chuckled. He made it to the line, finding a spot between Shikamaru and Shino. He looked at the two on either side and asked, "You two ready for this?" "Yes, I prepared myself beforehand and feel confident of my chances in getting promoted to Chunin," Shino replied with his standard monotone voice. Naruto was impressed. That was the most he had ever heard the boy say in a single sentence. Usually Shino preferred giving one-word answers. "This whole thing is too troublesome for me to even think about preparing for," Shikamaru said with a groan. It was clear to everyone that he would rather be watching clouds than standing there waiting to fight for a chance at getting a promotion, where if he did he would have even less time to watch clouds. "Hey, think of it this way," Naruto started. "At least it will keep your mother off your back for a little while longer." "That's true," Shikamaru said. "Damn, troublesome woman." Naruto snickered at his fellow Konoha genin's muttered last words. He thought about saying something about how the lazy Nara's mom wouldn't appreciate her son saying bad things about her, but before he could open his mouth Sarutobi began his opening speech. "Thank you for coming. I would like to welcome you all to Konoha's Chunin selection exams. We will now begin the main tournament between the 9 participants who made it through the preliminaries. Alright you guys, take a look. This is the lineup for the main matches." Shiranui Genma held up a sheet of paper with the matches shown on it. As you can see, there will be 5 matches for the first round, with the winner of match 4 fighting Yamanaka Ino. Hey wait, exclaimed Ino in a rather loud voice. Naruto winced. While her voice wasn't as loud and nail-on chalkboard sounding as Sakura's, she was still very loud. What happened to the guy the first was supposed to fight? He was disqualified, said Genma. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the hesitation when he said disqualified. That tone meant Dosu was likely dead. Could Orochimaru have killed him for that jutsu kin was going to be used in? Naruto wondered, before shaking his head. No, that would have alerted the Hokage that something was up, and it doesn't seem like his style to be so careless when planning an invasion. Now then, the same rules from the preliminaries apply here. This basically means there are none. Matches will be fought one-on-one until someone dies, is knocked unconscious, or admits defeat. However, if at any time I deem that a fight is over, I'll step in and end the match. Is that understood? When No spoke, Genma nodded, satisfied. Good. Now will Uzumaki Naruto and Hyuga Neji please step forward? All other contestants go to the fighter's booth. Whoa, check it out, said a ninja with long, spiky black hair and dark eyes. Hagane Katetsu was a Chunin-level shinobi and one of the judges for the Chunin exams. He was wearing a bandage over his nose and had a light-colored marking on his chin. His outfit consisted of the standard attire of a Konoha shinobi complete with forehead protector and flak jacket. I didn't get to see the prelims, but it seems the rumors were true. That kid is ripped. I wonder if that's why he always wore those obnoxious jumpsuits. Whatever, built or not, there's no way he can win against the Hyuga kid, said his partner, another Chunin with brown hair and dark eyes. Kamizuki Izumo had his hair combed down a way so that it was covering his right eye. He was wearing his forehead protector like a bandana along with the standard Konoha shinobi outfit which went all the way up to his chin in a flak jacket. I mean, he was the dead last in his class, and Hyuga Neji was last year's Rookie of the Year. Yeah, it's too bad. I kind of like the kid. Just a little below the two Chunin were Hinata and Kiba, both of whom had heard the Chunin examiner's words. Hey, don't listen to them, Hinata-chan, said Kiba in a reassuring tone. There's no way Naruto could lose. I mean, he kicked my like I was a mere academy student. His defeat at the hands of the blonde demon shinobi had shown Kiba that he had been slacking off all this time. During the 1-month period before the preliminaries, Kiba had taken to training with his mother, Inuzuka Sume, the matriarch of his clan, and his sister, Hana, in their clan techniques. Why, you're right, Kiba-kun, Hinata stammered. I need to think positively. And Naruto K-kun will win. She still wasn't sure about Naruto anymore. That power he had used scared her worse than Gaara. But, he had defended her from Neji, so the least she could do was support him. There ya go. Now let's watch Naruto kick your cousins. Man, who would have thought Naruto of all people would be in the final stages of the Chunin exams? Asuma said as he took a slow drag of his cigarette, blowing out a small ring of smoke a few seconds later. The surprises never cease. Kurenai wrinkled her nose as the smoke wafted over to her. Waving her hands in front of her face to rid herself of the acrid smoke, she said, it's definitely a surprising development. When you account for how much he changed in such a short time, it makes you wonder what happened in that forest. Ino said Naruto went from being scrawny and loud idiot to a hunky man she could just eat, Asuma said, making quotations marks when he spoke. It may have something to do with Orochimaru. We all know he got the Uchiha kid with his mark. He might have done something to Naruto as well. Maybe. For some reason Kurenai didn't think Orochimaru had actually done something to Naruto. At least, he wasn't the one responsible for his changes. No, there was something else going on with the blonde ninja, and she couldn't deny her curiosity about the blonde's new changes. Thankfully Anko seemed to have taken the same interest in the kid as she had, which meant she wouldn't need to do any snooping as Anko would do it all for her. A good thing too, it would be unsightly for a Jonin sensei to be gathering intelligence about someone else's student. Even the sensei of said student hadn't actually taught him anything. It was at this moment that Haruno Sakura decided to make her presence known to the two Jonin. Who cares about Naruto Baka? He's just an idiot and a monster. Asuma and Kurenai both looked at the girl in disgust. How could say such a thing about your own teammate? Questioned Kurenai as she glared at pink-haired girl. Because it's true, Sakura stated in a tone that said the reason for her words were all too obvious. Ka-san always told me he was a monster in disguise and the Chunin exams proved it. Only a monster could do what he did. The scowl on Kurenai's face was even worse than her. I found a pervert and I'm going to cast the worst genjutsu I can think of on him, face. That she wasn't leaking killing intent like a sieve was a testament to the impressive amount of control she had over her emotions, when all she wanted to do was beat the stupid pinkett to a pulp. It was girls like Sakura that gave all kunoichi a bad name. It was fortunate for Quenrai that someone decided to put the girl in her place before she did. A kunai sailed towards the pinkett from behind, slicing straight through her cheek and making the girl let out a loud yelp of both surprise and pain. Before she could bring her hand to her now bleeding skin, Enko appeared behind her with another kunai resting against the girl's throat. "You know it's cunt-sucking little bitches like you that give us true kunoichi a bad name," said the perplet as she traced the edge of her kunai along the younger girl's throat, drawing blood. Sakura began shivering as Enko began pouring killing intent at the girl. "I bet if the Uchiha had accomplished even half of what that Gaki did in the prelims, you'd be coming all over the place and proclaiming his greatness. You girl, are a pathetic waste of flesh and space, and if all you're going to do is insult someone who is better than you, then I suggest you leave." As added incentive, Enko blasted Sakura with nearly half of her killing intent. The pinkett let out a loud shriek. However, rather than run off like Enko had wanted, the girl fell to the floor and curled up in a fetal position. Enko's sweat dropped. "Dear Kami, are you seriously that pathetic?" "I think that's enough for now, Enko-chan," Kurenai said, catching her best friend's attention. "You may want to rein in your killing intent, you're scaring some of the civilians." "Oh, hi Nai-chan," Enko said with a bright smile, completely ignoring her friend's statement. "I almost didn't see you there, I was so busy having Funa playing with the bitch over here." "I can see that. Now why don't you sit down and rein in your killing intent? The exams are about to start." Right, Enko sat down on Kurenai's right. "Man, I can't wait for this thing to get started. I've got a lot of money on the Gaki to win it all." "Not betting on the Hyuga kid or the Uchiha?" asked Asuma. Enko snorted. "Are you shitting me? Bet on that stuck-up, stick in the Hyuga. Or place money on the prissy little Uchiha bitch, who I might add is being trained by I'm never on time Kakashi." "No thanks. Besides, there's just something about the blonde Gaki that makes me want to bet on him. And with the odds I got, if he wins this, then I am going to be very rich." Cuckoo. Asuma and Kurenai both sweat dropped as Enko began chuckling in a very evil manner, and mumbling about what she would do with her winnings, and how she was going to thank the hunky blonde Gaki when he won. Some of what was said disturbed Kurenai. Asuma just thought it sounded kinky and felt a moment of jealousy towards Naruto. As Genma got close he spoke. "The first matchup of the Chunin exams finals, Uzumaki Naruto vs. Hyuga Neji, are you ready?" Neji smirked as he looked at the blonde, who had a rather nonchalant expression on his face. "I suggest you give up. You were already fated to lose this match." Naruto picked at his ear as if he hadn't heard the Hyuga prodigy. Though he answered a second later. How about I don't, and instead kick your from here to Sunday?" Genma took these statements to mean they were itching to get started. "Hajime." He quickly leapt out of the way as the crowd roared while the matches started.